a lot of doomsday talk in the industry today. Expo attendance is down, expo sales are down, Tinley was down this October, all the other expos, vendors are saying that they're not making as many sales as they used to, and there's a lot of mom and pop reptile shops and reptile suppliers that aren't really doing good right now. So, is this downward spiral here to stay? Is the reptile world actually dying? Well, we're going to talk about that and more in today's video. I'm Dave Kaufman, and these are my reptile adventures. So in order to answer the question, is the reptile world actually dying, you've got to keep it in context. And by context, I mean where the industry is today as opposed to where it was 10, 20, even 30 years ago. You know, I remember my very first Reptile Expo. It wasn't even called an expo back then. They were called swaps. And it was in a barn in the middle of rural Iowa. I don't even remember where it was, but I vividly remember this because back then there was maybe 10 to 15 vendors and maybe 50 people through the door, and there was no banners, there was no tablecloths. It was just somebody who had a barn, who was into reptiles, got a bunch of his friends together and said, hey, let's swap our reptiles. And back then, this was well before the ball python craze. This might have been back in 96, 97, somewhere in there. But I so vividly remember it because back in those days, I was breeding a lot of colubrids. I was breeding corn snakes and corn snake morphs, and I was breeding bull snakes. And back then, I was one of the first people to ever produce the albino bull snake. And you know, things were really taking off about 30 years ago in the reptile world. Things were just starting, and things were just starting to get good. And as a matter of fact, if you were a vendor at these expos, or swaps as they were, they lasted from maybe, let's say, 11 o'clock to about 5 o'clock, just the same way expos are today, but they never lasted till 5 o'clock. And the reason for that is because every vendor at these swaps was basically sold out of what they brought by about 1 o'clock. And it continued that way for years. And as a matter of fact, the first real expos were held, at least in this part of the country, at the Midwest Herpetological Symposium. So it was a weekend-long herpetological symposium. It happened once a year, either in Kansas City or here in Minneapolis or Madison or Chicago, wherever in the upper Midwest that Herp Society chose to host it that year is where it was. And Saturday was all about the talks, and there was speakers all day long on Saturday, but Sunday was the actual swap or expo, and that was kind of the precursor to the expos that we have today. And that lasted, I think, well, it's even still going on to this day. But in this area of the country, those expos were only held once a year at the Midwest Herpetological Symposium, and therefore, again, those expos would go to, like, let's say 10 to 5, but they would never last till 5 because everybody sold out by about 1 or 2 o'clock. And I remember back then I was breeding corn snake morphs that at the time were considered kind of high-end, cutting-edge corn snake morphs. And I'm talking albinos, axanthics, normal motleys. Things you just don't really see on tables anymore. And if you do, I always stop and take a look at them just out of nostalgia. But back then, normal motley corn snakes were selling for 50 bucks, I think I had them on my table for. And I was like, nobody's gonna spend $50 on a snake. Nobody in their right mind is gonna spend $50 on a snake. Well, sure enough, I sold out of every motley corn snake that I had for $50. And I remember walking out of every single expo, and I was just ecstatic that I had maybe $500 in my pocket, which was more money than I could make working at any given job over that weekend. And in those barns in Iowa, at those Midwest Herp Symposium swaps, that's where our industry got its start. So when things are down now, which they are, let's be honest, you really have to put it into context as to where we were 30 years ago when things in this industry really started getting cooking. Shortly after that, the ball python craze happened. Kevin McCurley was working with genes that no one had ever seen before. Pete Call had proved out the pied as genetic. Brian Barczyk imported the first pinstripe. Things were just starting to get cooking in the ball python industry back then. And because of that, what happened is a lot of people like me who were breeding really amazing colubrids those genes kind of got lost because we all kind of switched our focus to ball pythons. And that market has been going strong for now almost 25 years, if not more. So by putting all of this into context, what I mean is that if you compare the market to what it is today to what it was back in 97, 98, when you would go to one of these swaps and you would sell out of everything that you brought to that swap by 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and then call it a day with a pocket full of cash, when has that happened in the last, let's say, 25 years? When was the last time you went to an expo and actually sold everything on your table within about 4 hours? It's almost unheard of to do that nowadays. But there is an expo somewhere in this country, or literally somewhere in this world, every single weekend of the year. Back then, there was one a year, and that's why we sold out. There wasn't that kind of competition. You either went to this once-a-year swap meet to get your snakes, or there was really very little mechanics set up so that you could get snakes throughout the year. And then, of course, kingsnake.com came on the scene. We began shipping snakes. That revolutionized everything. When people talk about how the reptile industry is at an all-time low, what are they comparing it to? Flash forward a couple of years and about maybe the early O's, let's say from 2000 to 2005. We had a ton of ball python morphs hit the market all at once and start this ball python revolution. People were selling snakes not for 50 bucks, they were selling them for $60,000 each. As a matter of fact, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the first bumblebees that Kevin McCurley produced, he had a price tag on those of $60,000, and I do believe he sold those. I know that the pinstripe back when it first started was $25,000, and I think when the pieds first started, hets were like $13,000 and visuals were $25,000. And all of a sudden, this massive boom in the reptile world happened, and a lot of people were making a lot of money. What did I do during this time? Oh, I didn't recognize it, and I chose to go to LA to be a filmmaker and missed the whole thing. Got started very, very late when I realized what was happening in the reptile world, and I kind of crept back into it. By the time I got back into it, it was too late to really get in on the ground level. But obviously I did get back into it in a very big way. So let's flash forward a couple of years later, back in, let's say 08, 09, all the way up to about 2013. That's when I was making the Herpers movies. And what I saw when I was filming those movies is I saw a lot of international buyers coming to Pomona, coming to Tinley, and just literally flipping off $100 bills at these tables, bringing back all of these ball pythons back to Japan, back to Europe, wherever they were from. And you really don't see that a lot anymore, but you're gonna see that again in the future, and it's not gonna be from Japan and it's not gonna be from Europe. It's actually gonna be from China. The ball python market in China and other places in Southeast Asia is exploding right now, kind of like it was here about 20 years ago. So in the future, the Chinese market is what to focus on if you're still breeding ball pythons, but you just don't see a lot of international buyers coming flip out $100 bills after $100 bills at tables anymore. But does that mean that our industry is dying?
Morph Market is the #1 online marketplace for all your reptiles and amphibians. You can search through over 60 categories to find your perfect new pet, whether it's the latest boa constrictor morph or your 150th crested gecko. It's all right here at one place. Morph Market.
Now, flash forward from there 10 years to 2020. What happened in 2020? Oh, we had a pandemic. Everybody thought that that was the end of the world, that was the end of the reptile world, that we could not travel, we could not go to reptile expos, and therefore our industry was over. So the summer of 2020, everybody thought the sky was falling on the reptile world. They all thought that it was dying, they all thought that it was all over, but yet the opposite happened. What happened is that everybody was confined to their homes, they had nothing to do, so they put their time, energy, and money into their reptile breeding facilities. And the government at the time was giving stimulus checks. What did most people do with that stimulus check? They went and bought snakes. And that really strengthened the market. So from about 2020 till about 2022, Our industry saw a boom that it never thought it would ever see at a time where we thought that the industry was completely going to flatline, it was over, and the exact opposite happened. So flash forward to today, 2025, we're seeing that pendulum swing this way. So whereas we had this massive couple of year boom because of the pandemic, now we're seeing things kind of level out a little bit. And those sales that we enjoyed just 3 years ago, they're not happening anymore. And therefore I think that a lot of people think that the reptile world is dying because of that. The reptile world and the reptile market is just like the stock market. It is a roller coaster. When you're up, you think it's going to stay up. Everybody cheers. When it's down in the valley like we are now, everybody thinks that it's going to stay here, and it never does. And let's face it, we are down in the valley right now. As a matter of fact, you kind of can't give a ball python away right now. I had several adult, multiple gene adult females on my table at Tinley, like albino pied adult proven breeder females I was trying to sell for like $300, $400. I brought them home. And a lot of other vendors that were at Tinley last October reported the same kind of thing. I think that if you are going to thin out your collection and sell off some of your adults, that's totally fine. But if you're a buyer and you're looking towards the future, buy those adult snakes when you see them. Because yes, again, we're in the valley. We are not going to stay here. No, the reptile world is not dying. But I will say this. What I did last year when I started to notice that the reptile world wasn't doing so well and ball python sales weren't really doing what they were expected to do, what we wanted them to do, I made a decision to not breed anything last year. And I didn't, except for one clutch, because I paired up a male and a female for one night before I decided I wasn't going to produce anything. About last March, I noticed she was sitting on eggs, and I kind of had to go back and think about what did I pair up with this female to get this one clutch of eggs. But the point is that if you want to strengthen the ball python market, seriously, take a year off. Don't breed anything for the season of 25 and 26. And the thought behind that is that it's going to reduce the amount of ball pythons available, and it's going to thus increase demand because the supply is not meeting that demand. And so in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, that demand will increase, but because we took the year off, our supply will decrease, thus making the supply that we have a lot more valuable, and a lot more valuable not only in the monetary value of that snake, but in the demand for people wanting them. Now, I know that a lot of people aren't going to take the year off. A lot of people have mortgages to pay for, like I do. They have bills to pay for, and a lot of people that may be watching this pay for all that stuff, pay for their costs of living with their ball python breeding programs. So if you don't want to take the year off, or you can't take the year off, this is what I suggest to do. Make your hets now. Pair up your snake so that you are looking 3 years, 4 years, even 6 years into the future. Make your hets now. Pair up what snakes you have so that you're making 3 gene het, 4 gene het, even 5 gene hets, that in the next 3 years as you're raising those up, hopefully demand will increase because supply was decreased, and whatever you produce with those hets in a few years, you're going to strengthen the market, and the market is going to boom again. So at this point, most of my breeding facility is all hets that I've made. I'm selling off those adult female and male ball pythons that I paired up to breed those hets, and I'm selling off all those adult female and adult male ball pythons that I used to make the hets that I am now raising up. And again, hopefully, it's going to increase the value of the offspring of those hets that I'm making now without continuing to flood a market that is, let's face it, really saturated with ball pythons now, and that demand is at an all-time low for them right now. So we do have the power to bring the ball python market and all reptile sales back to a level to where we enjoyed in the past. And again, I don't think that the reptile world is dying. I think that we are in a valley right now, and we as breeders do have that power to get ourselves out of this valley and put more monetary demand on ball pythons and other reptiles as well. So comment below, let me know if you agree with that or disagree with that, and let me know what you guys are doing to kind of combat us being in this valley right now. So this time of year is expo season, and I go to a lot of expos. Either I'm vending at them or I'm filming at them. But when I was at the Kansas City Expo, I talked to a couple of breeders and asked them if they thought the reptile world is dying, just to get a basic idea of how other breeders and vendors see the reptile market today.
Chris Bollinger from Epic Style. Is the reptile world dying?
As far as like just market-wise and perception of shows and everybody messaging and seeing how was your weekend, how was this show, how is that going on, and we're at a lull.
David Levinson. Is the reptile world dying?
Probably not.
That's the best answer.
No, I think all these things come in waves over the years, and I think if you committed to a species that 99% of the industry is going to have, it's always going to be competitive, and you got to understand that. There's a lot of other species, and I know breeders that have actually over the last 2 years said they're their best years, even post-COVID, beat out their COVID numbers. I do think there's an acceptance for some investable animals that are actually now, in my opinion, pets and have to be treated as pets, which is fine. They're really pretty designer pets, but not everything is investable anymore. And I think there's always a way to find it, but to tell you the truth, over the next 3 years, these are our grinder years. The industry will lose vendors over the next few years because it comes in these waves all the time. Strong will survive, but it's just not a market if you're not a grinder right now, to be honest with you.
Tim Simon from Simon T. Reptiles. Is the reptile world dying?
Reptile world is still existing, so it's not dead yet. I think it's just changing to hobby stuff and enjoying things. So not dying, work hard at it.
And I always say everything comes in like a 5-year wave, 5 really good years, and then like 3 or 4 bad years until we get into our next wave. And there's always, like, depending on what community you're in, there's always different reasons why there's a drop. But honestly, every conversation we have about the market failing is usually around ball python breeding. And again, that community has done just fine and has always found a way to make it work. Because everybody, in my opinion, we're so invested in the species, it's not going to die overnight. But that also goes back to me saying that some of these are designer pets and some of these are investment animals, and we have to know the difference and we have to accept it moving forward. It's just the way it is.
Brian Cusco. Is the reptile world dying?
Oh, the market, it's had its ups and downs, right? That's a constant. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. When it goes down, some people fall off and drown, then it goes back up, and then some people jump on the ship while it's up and out of the water, and then it goes back down, and it's a cycle.
It's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I think I just said that earlier in this video.
Yeah. I don't know what you said earlier in this video. Whatever it was, maybe I disagree with that. I don't know. I didn't hear you.
Yeah, well, everything I say you have to agree with.
Right.
So, again, I don't believe the reptile world is dying. Again, I think we're just in a valley. And when you're in a valley, everybody kind of gets this doomsday kind of feel that this is the end, it's all over, everything is crashed, sell everything, get rid of everything, move on to the next big thing. And again, I think that's a terrible, terrible mistake. Any brokers out there that teach you how to invest in the stock market will all tell you the same thing. You sell when it's high, you buy when it's low. So when it's low, spend your money, because that low is not going to last there. The reptile industry is too strong, and there are too many passionate people involved in the reptile industry to let us stay in this valley. And to have the valley that we're in now, it just doesn't make any sense to me that all of us, with all of our creativity and all of our brains, would just let this industry die because we're in a valley right now. And again, all of us have the power and the strength to get us out of this valley and put the reptile world back to where it was in the past, which was a very vibrant, lucrative market. And let's face it, a lot of fun to be in. When you're not making a lot of money at something that you're passionate about, the fun kind of goes out the window with that, and it doesn't need to be. So again, I don't think the reptile world is dying. As a matter of fact, I I don't even think that we have begun to scratch the surface of all the ball python morphs that we can create, all the hognose morphs that we can create. Boas are coming up in the world in popularity. House snakes are coming up in the world in popularity. We have not even begun to scratch the surface of everything that our industry can offer to potential buyers and to other breeders. Every single year, there are still world's firsts coming out. Every single year, somebody breaks out with a new gene combo, or crack that code on how to breed reptiles that we kind of deemed as pretty difficult to breed, like tree monitors, for instance. So I just wanted to real quick make this video because I do hear a lot of people talk about how the reptile world is dying, and it is absolutely not. The reptile world works like any other market. It has its ups, it has its downs. The pendulum swings this way, the pendulum swings that way. This industry is going to thrive, and in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when you look back at this video about how in 2025 we all thought the reptile world was dying, we're going to kind of laugh at it. Because there's going to be so many other projects in the future that we just don't have the foresight to see at this moment right now. So again, guys, start that conversation in the comment section below. Do you think the reptile world is dying? Do you think that we can fix the reptile world and get it back to where it used to be historically? Start that conversation in the comment section below. And guys, as always, thanks for watching, and until the next reptile adventure, love the planet, feed your reptile obsession, and rattle on.